Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the July eClaims webinar. Today, in addition to myself, Michael Hunter, we also have Mary Beth Goodsell and Patty Gray from the eClaims team, as well as we also have folks from the Monitoring and Payor Compliance unit to give you some updates on their initiatives as well. From there, we have Christopher Grant, Mary Duncan, and Scott Clark, and they will be presenting briefly as well this afternoon. Just a reminder that phones are muted for this webinar, and any questions that you would like to submit, you may do so through the chat feature. And when doing that, you want to select all panelists and send your question through that. The agenda for today, we're going to go over any new 3.0 news. We'll also go over some of the 3.1 news and some of the updates from the last webinar. We'll go over those Payor compliance updates. And at the end, again, we will have a question and answer session, and you can submit those through chat. Just remember, if for some reason you don't feel comfortable submitting a question through chat, or you forget and remember later on, you always have the emails, and we will give those out a couple times during the webinar as well. You can always submit through email later on. For the 3.0 news, I'm going to turn it over to Patty Gray.
We began using a new cause code of 83 for a pandemic for COVID-19. It's important for us to remember to use this code. We're still seeing cases come in where COVID-19 isn't being reported properly. So we just want to give you a reminder to make sure and use that code. Another reminder is for the FROI AQ/AU requirements when a new claim administrator takes over a claim. This should be filed on all active cases, including closed cases that medical is being paid. Failure to file the AQ/AU could result in issues with the drug formulary dashboard assignment. The board can impose a penalty under Section 25(3)(e). This would be imposed by the monitoring unit. A 402 transaction should be sent with the insurer fund changes when the insurer fund changes. This could also affect the drug formulary dashboard. When the board receives the transaction and the insurer does not match our insurance company records based on proof of coverage reporting, a request for the 402 is sent at the case level. The 402 should be filed, or a response to the request should be sent indicating the policy information, so a determination can be made to change the primary insurer on the file. The board could also impose a penalty, 25(3)(e) penalty, for failure to file a required form. And this penalty would be imposed outside of the monitoring unit process, but could be imposed at a case level according to the statute. We would also like you to remember to send a 402 on a claim that you're still paying indemnity or medical on if the insurer fund changes. This could also affect the drug formulary dashboard process, and the 25(3)(e) penalty could be imposed as well. And I will give it back over to Mike now.
Thank you, Patty. All right, so for the eClaims 3.1 news this month, We're going to do the presentation. I'm also going to hop over to the website during the presentation just so you can actually see where to find the resources that we're talking about in case you're new to the website or have not gone to our website since the changes were made to include the 3.1 information for eClaims. The first set of news was that the June 16th webinar slide deck and video recording are now available on the presentation page. Just like this right now, we're recording and we will post this presentation as well. So if you are unable to attend or had someone in your office that was unable, you will still be able to hear the webinar as well as see the presentation. We post both of those. We also posted a change to the changelog. Very routinely, every couple months, we will post updates, and when we do, we'll note those in our changelog so that you know. So you'll notice that number 8, 14, and 21 on the changelog had a typo fixed, and number 19 and 20, we just added the population restriction text from the edit matrix just to clarify the circumstances for that change. We had a couple folks question what we meant by the text in the changelog, so we thought it'd be clear by including the actual population restriction text. So to locate those up on the website, when you're on the board website, you will see the eClaims icon over here. When you click on that icon, you'll come over to the eClaims page. On that page, you'll have a couple things available to you. One is 3.0. We're still submitting through 3.0 today. You can go over there. You can also go over to 3.1 as well. There are quick links down here. So those presentations I was just speaking about, if you click on presentations right there, you'll come to this page and you'll see every month we've been posting our videos. Those are always available as well as the PDF. For the changelog, we can click the 3.1 page. And when we're there, you'll see different resources within there, the requirements table, implementation guide, as well as FAQs. Under the requirements table, you will see that changelog option right there. And when you click on that, you will get an Excel spreadsheet that looks just like this here. So you'll see, for example, number 19, we just added the text associated to those body parts so that folks knew what we meant by the multiple body parts related to that population restriction. The next thing that we updated were the FAQs for 3.1. So you'll notice here we did 4 new FAQs, and I will take you over to those as well. You'll notice here the 4, they mostly have to do with either O2s or overpayments. As we get questions into the eClaims 3.1 email, if we see something coming up more than once, we like to post those out there so that other folks can see them as well. So if we were to choose the FAQs, it will hyperlink you down to the 3.1 FAQs down here. So you'll see down here the 4 questions we added are 8, 9, 10, and 11. One of those is if you're reporting an overpayment on a SHRAE 02, do you also have to file the request for further action form RFA2 requesting the reimbursement? The answer to that was yes. A new subdivision of 323 is being added, and it will read as such here. The next FAQ was if we had previously submitted a SHRAE 02 reporting an overpayment, are we required to file the RFA2 if we want reimbursement? Or is there another SHRAE 02 due at the same time? The answer to that is no. If the SHROI 02 already lists the current overpayment amount, you would not have to file a new SHROI 02 with your RFA 2 requesting the reimbursement. Question 10 was can we submit Form RFA 2 requesting the overpayment be addressed without filing the 02 reporting the overpayment? No, you would need to file both the RFA 2 as well as the SHROI 02 in that circumstance. I did want to note another question came up recently. Does it have to be on the 02? And the answer to that is no. If, as always, per the standard, if there's more appropriate MTC that applies, you would file that, and if it allows the overpayment data element to be reported, that is perfectly acceptable as well. The last question is, can more than one update on a change 02 still be submitted? And the answer to that is yes. You can continue to submit more than one change on that 02 transaction. The only exception to that is match data elements. In that regard, there's not much change between 3.0 and 3.1. Same rules apply, that the match data element is one transaction per match data element. The next news we actually just posted recently, and that is that we updated the implementation guide to include the trading partner onboard testing for the 3.1 upgrade. So right now we are planning on the onboarding between November 16th, 2020 through February 27th, 2021. We will cut it off at that point, so there's a couple weeks between then and the go live on March 15th. We highly encourage that you start as early as possible. Do not wait until the end of that onboarding period. All trading partners must be ready to submit 3.1 transactions on March 15, 2021, and there is no exceptions for that. It is an all-in approach. We are cutting over to 3.1 in our system on March 15th. You can find information within the implementation guide on our website. So if you were to go to the implementation guide, within that, 3.7 covers the flat file submission. Not much has changed from those familiar with the 3.0 implementation. We still are following the basic approach of test A, B, C, and D, with the last one being optional if you want to keep going. Within this, you'll notice the FROIs for test A and FROIs and SHROIs for test B. Those have not changed much from 3.0. You will notice a few notes in here. There's requirements for the 400 to include multiple body parts and things like that, just so you can test your system out and test your edits out based on the new data elements in 3.1. There's a question about the web entry, and I am actually going to move to that right now. That is covered in 3.12. Anyone using web entry, as you're familiar with that, has 100% acceptance rate. It will tell you what's wrong with the transaction in real time, and you can fix and submit it in real time. So there will be a 3.1 web entry testing available to you. It is not required of you to move to 3.1 on March 15th. We will make it available, though, to all web entry users who are current users of 3.0. So you will have the chance to go in there, see what the changes look like, try submitting a transaction, and that way you'll have the ability to prepare for those changes, any screen changes you may see, and you'll be able to go through and do that. We do include testing requirements very similar to the flat file. Again, for anyone though that already is submitting through 3.0, this would be optional, the web entry testing. You are not required to do it. It is highly encouraged though. If you are a new trading partner and you were to start on March 15th and never submitted before, this would be the test plan that you would follow. Very similar to anyone who is a new trading partner over the last few years and had to go through our web entry testing and submit the 50 transactions. There is another question about if all insurers have to test or can we test through the vendor. For this round with 3.1, since everyone has experience with 3.0, we are just having your vendor test. So if you're submitting directly through the vendor, only your vendor will have to test and they will test once with us. So we are not requiring every insurer for that vendor to test separately. So for example, to use one of the vendor's names, Mitchell, Mitchell would test with us once, and once they're approved for 3.1, that would cover anyone that that vendor is going to be submitting on behalf of for 3.1. With that, I will encourage that if you do use a vendor or you're going to be switching to a vendor for 3.1, that you do let the board know, just so we don't schedule you for testing if you're currently filing direct with the board. And also so you can get that vendor added to your profile so that when we move to onboarding in a couple months, that we're ready to get your vendor set up to submit for you.
Mike, did you see we have a question about SROI overpayment data elements?
I do not have that one, Mary Beth.
Okay. It must have been sent just to me instead of all presenters. The question is, what SROI forms have overpayment data elements? So that answer falls on the element requirement table. So if you look at the element requirement table and you look at the DN 0433, that's how you tell which SROIs have that data element on it. So I don't know, Mike, we have time. We're ahead of schedule. Can you open up the element requirement table? We can kind of use this exercise as a training.
Sure.
And show how we can filter. So the release 3.1 IIBC element requirement table has some new features in it. And one of the nice features is that you can filter. So when you go to the element requirement table and you go over to the SROI, you can actually filter by data element name or number. I happen to know the DN number. It's the DN 0433. So if you didn't know it, you could look up the data element name. And Mike will filter out there. And here you can see that we have it as AR, so it's applicable. If you want to send it, like Mike said earlier, on another transaction, you can send it on any of those transactions. However, we do have it as a Y, as an add and update on the SROI 02. It is on our event table because you do need to file it at least 10 days before the hearing based on our proposed reg. And there was another question, Mike, I don't know, again, if it was just sent to me, but the question is, for release 3.1, will all these changes apply to claims with reported date as go live, or all current claims as well? If they have a current claim with an injured body part or finger, am I expected to add the location for finger? So again, looking at this element requirement table gives you all of the requirements. So the body part is on the SROI, and that is required on new SROIs filed effective 3/15/2020 R3.1 with our new implementation. You are expected to add an update. You can see there that we have it as Y for add, update, delete. So anytime there's a change made to the variable segment under the number counter 420, we expect you to file an O2. So that's how you would read this element error table for our requirements on that data element. Those were the only two sent to me, Mike.
All right. Just a reminder, folks, if you are sending questions, you want to make sure you're using the chat, not the Q&A. You want to use the chat. And in the chat, you want to send to all panelists is the two that you'll select in there, just so we can all see those questions. So at this time, I am going to turn it over to Christopher Grant from the monitoring unit of the board for the Payor Compliance updates.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Grant. I'm an attorney with Payor Compliance and Monitoring, and we just have a few updates to give you guys. So beginning in or about September 2020, the board will begin measuring timeliness of the suspension filings, that's destroy SX, required when payments made to claimants have been suspended. Prior to implementing penalties, the board will be conducting a period of outreach and education on the measurement of suspension transactions. The penalty phase is tentatively scheduled to begin around January of 2021. The monitoring unit is currently in the process of developing a report indicating claims in which there appears to be a missing suspension filing. We will be contacting claim administrators on these cases and request that they submit the suspension filings as soon as possible or contact the Payor Compliance unit if they believe the suspension is not required. This report will be similar to current reports being used for FROI and SROI filings. Similar to the implementation of the FROI, SROI, and controversy measurements, stakeholder input is encouraged when reviewing the Payor Compliance application, as well as any missing suspension reports you may have received. We have an example of the missing suspension report. This is what it's going to be look like. It have the WCB case ID, claimant name, insurer ID, insurer name, claim administrator ID, etc. So the missing suspension report will be sent monthly, and the report will continue to be sent monthly once penalties are implemented. Once the penalties are implemented, should the same missing suspension appear on the report for multiple months, a manual penalty may be assessed for failure to file the required suspension. So the penalties that will be enforced are Workers' Compensation Law Section 25.1D and Section 25.3E. Now, the dollar amount for Section 25.1D will be $300 payable to the claimant, and the dollar amount for 25.3E will be $50 payable to the board. So under 25.1D, suspension is not timely under Section 25.1D if the suspension received date is more than 16 days after the greater of the benefit payment issue date, benefit period through date, or suspension effective date, then the filing is late. The 16-day time frame under Section 25.1D applies regardless of whether payments are being made pursuant to Section 21A or not. Under Section 25.3E, suspension is not timely under 25.3E if paying pursuant to Section 21A when the suspension received date is more than 5 days after the greater of the benefit payment issue date, benefit period through date, or suspension effective date. So what claims are being measured? The board will be measuring all suspension filings in which the date of accident is on or after January 1st, 2018, and a suspension filing is made on or after September 1st, 2020. Similar to the implementation of FOI and controversy measurements, the board will be assessing penalties on a sliding scale based on the carrier's compliance rate. So for the first quarter of 2021, it would be 70%, second quarter of 2021, 75%, third quarter of 2021, 80%, and then for the fourth quarter, 85%. I know this is just a very brief introduction. If we don't get to your questions during this webinar, you could always email further questions to monitoring@wcb.ny.gov. I yield the rest of my time.
So it looks like one of the questions was answered by a subsequent slide, but we do have two other questions. One of those is they're asking how far back is the WCB going to be looking for the suspensions?
Mary, are you on the chat?
Yeah, I'm here now.
Oh, sorry.
We will be going back to dates of accident of January 1st, 2018.
The next question is, are these business days or calendar days?
Calendar days. If it falls on a weekend or a board holiday, we go to the next business day for the due date of the forms. Same as with the other FOI controversy filings.
And the last question regarding monitoring is, who will be getting these reports at the claim administrator?
At this time, we really have not decided, but I believe it will most likely go to the Payor Compliance contacts that they have informed us of.
All right, and it looks like that's it for the Payor Compliance questions as yet. I do see a couple of questions about eClaims. One of those was legacy claims, and if you need to add the body parts retroactively, we are just using that implementation date. So if you're submitting 3.1 FOI, then on March 15th we would require, but if you're talking about a 3.0 claim that you previously reported, no, we would not require you to go back. We would accept it if you submitted it. We wouldn't reject it, but it is not a requirement. And then there was a question about for someone who uses data entry, are they currently submitting under 3.1 or 3.0? Currently, the board is submitting through 3.0 is the current release of the IAIBC standard. So if you're using data entry, you are submitting through 3.0 right now. What will happen is you will have the ability to test and submit in a test environment for the 3.1 transactions, just so you get used to it before we go live. And then on March 15th, we would cut that system over and you would be submitting production transactions for 3.1. Just so everyone sees, it's on the screen right now, but stay informed. We highly encourage you to continue to visit our website for updates. We will continue at the eClaims work group to send those email blasts out to the business, technical, and administrator contacts. We will continue to also post to the IAIBC online communities We post both the jurisdictional news as well as EDI general interest. Anytime we have an update, a new webinar announced, when the recording is posted for this webinar, we will do the same as well. Continue to send your questions to the eClaims 3.1 at wcb.ny.gov email for anything 3.1 related. And the 3.0 team is still there for you. So if you have any questions about the current release, rejections, you can continue to send those questions to eClaims. And we are on social media. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and these webinars will be posted to the YouTube as well. We will stay on for an extra minute in case there's any questions, but otherwise, thank you for attending today and have a great rest of your day. Thank you. All right, folks, it doesn't look like we have any more questions, so we are going to end the webinar today. But again, have a great rest of your day, and any questions at all, the eClaims emails are there, or anything regarding payer compliance can go to that monitoring@wcb.ny.gov email. Thank you again.